Hello, I'd like to share with you some benchmark reminders. Just a couple things I want to share with you. Just remember that benchmark testing schedule is flexible. I know some of you feel like that, there's some um, overlap and maybe taking too long, but just do remember that you can have some flexibility with that. And these benchmarks are to help us. They're formative assessments. They are to help us. A couple other things you need to keep in mind that their format changes with third, fourth, and fifth grade reading. They're set up as close as they can to what the CAT testing will be for the end of the year SOL test. So that may take kids a little bit longer. They're not able to mark and go back. So just keep that in mind. Also, just keep in mind too, it's best to do these changes now than it would be to try to do them closer to the SOL test. So kids will be used to those. So we're trying to make sure that the kids have made their adaptations to the testing formats as early as possible. Again, they are formative assessments, and don't let that impede the fact of what you're teaching. Don't wait for the benchmarks to be over with before you continue with your instruction. You go ahead and carry on what you're doing with your instruction, just as if you would after you do a quiz or a unit test, whatever in your class. So just continue on with what you're doing. And there's really not a set score for the benchmarks. We've used 60 as an arbitrary score in the past just because it was a pretty close reflection to a pass proficient score on the majority of the SOL test. But as we're moving toward the CAT testing, the computer adaptive testing, this will not be applicable anymore, so we really can't use that. But it's just something for us to see where they are at that time. Again, that formative assessment mindset we need to have. Also, the benchmarks, just because they are benchmark tests, they only represent a portion of the material that's on the SOL test, so we can't predict a kid's going to make a 60 on the benchmark test, that they're going to make a 400 on the SOL test, simply because it's only a portion of the test. One of the suggestions I would have for you is if you compare your scores from first quarter last year to the first quarter this year and see where your kids are at. And just had some conversations today with some teachers who talked about how much different the scores were from this year to last year. And again, we can put that 60 as a cut score on the test, and I've done that for some of them, so that that will help you to see where you are. We should receive a report near the end of October when everybody in Region 7 is finished with their benchmarks, depending on when they started and where they are at this particular point in the year. So those are really going to be helpful with us when we see those scores, the percentile scores, and see where we are in relation to where we were, and also in relation to where other schools were, if they were accredited or not accredited. So our goal is not to be in that lower percentile. We want to be near the top. We don't want to be near the bottom of those percentile ranks, due to the fact that those scores we can kind of see where those scores were relative to the SOL scores from past performance. So that's probably the most useful bit of data that we'll get from the benchmarks. If you have any questions about benchmarks, or there's any complications you run into with these, please don't be afraid to call, and we'll try to share information with you as much as we possibly can. Otherwise, I think we're going to do fine, and thank you very much for listening.